JCH, Jon is on the podcast after, I don't even know.
Dude, I looked it up. It was podcast
sabbatical.
16.
No,
Yeah.
that's over 300 episodes.
16.
Well, he's back and his life has changed, though similar, different. No, I really enjoyed talking about this. I listened a lot because it jogs a lot of memories of conversations I've had with Ken and how we're building material millwork and the opportunities that lie in front of us outside of just handcrafting millwork, which I think is a beautiful skill set that I love dearly. And I never want to give up on, though I'm not the one physically building. I am more of a support structure. I see that, and as Jon kind of alludes to, there's so many opportunities in this space that allow a business to thrive. And frankly, you'll hear Jon talk about how it might even be a more profitable endeavor. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's being that was that long ago, I don't remember everything from the podcast, and there's certain things that I can recall, and seeing him progress through his career at this point, I guess that was 7 years ago. So I think he said he's 49. He was 42 at that point, and how much can change in such a short amount of time, and still like what opportunities there are for all of us, whether we're wearing a tool belt, not wearing a tool belt. We want a mix of that. It's cool to see how everyone is maturing, how everyone is progressing throughout their career, and the experience and the wisdom that we can draw just from, doing this for such a long time and then hopping on a podcast and sharing that with everyone. So I'm excited to get him back on and have you guys listen and for your feedback on this one.
Let's get into it. This podcast is brought to you by Andersen Windows. So, Tyler, I know standard in almost every build you're seeing double pane glass, but I've installed triple pane glass. Have you?
I have not, but we've been discussing it potentially for our home build.
I know
I've been learning a little bit about it.
I know you've walked some of our projects. You've seen that triple glazed glass. It's impressive to see in person for a number of reasons, but it's even more impressive when we were able to reduce some of our heating and cooling loads on some of our builds by 50% just by changing to a higher performance glass.
Yeah, especially I would say with how much glass you're adding to projects these days as well. Having, reducing the energy loss through those windows is going to be very important, impactful for the entire house build.
Yeah, and triple pane windows can be the ultimate solution for homeowners seeking unparalleled comfort, efficiency, and savings. Triple pane glass is your key to superior insulation and reduced energy bills.
Designed for high-performing homes, these windows elevate the comfort in a home to new heights. Say goodbye to drafts and noise pollution while basking in abundant natural light and breathtaking views.
So if you're wondering, are triple panes worth it? Absolutely. For those who value comfort, efficiency, and the perfect home environment, just learn more about Andersen's triple pane glass options at andersenwindows.com/pros. This podcast is brought to you by Buildertrend. Whether you identify as a semi-custom home builder or a spec builder or even a high-volume builder, technology like Buildertrend can help you build more efficiently. With Buildertrend, you can manage unlimited jobs, communicate with subcontractors and clients, and increase profit margins, all while delivering beautiful homes fast.
If you are a semi-custom builder, join the thousands of other pros who trust Buildertrend to standardize their processes and manage a high volume of projects without sacrificing quality. Ready to see how it works for semi-custom home builders? Visit buildertrend.com/MC semi-custom and start building more efficiently today.
This podcast is brought to you by Velux. You're always looking for ways to wow homeowners, and who doesn't want more natural light?
With Velux skylights, you can transform any space by adding more natural light without sacrificing privacy.
Bring life to focal points, including the kitchen or the living room, or brighten up a small space such as a closet or a bathroom, and leave your clients speechless.
Learn more at veluxusa.com/remodeler. Sorry, I was running late.
I was like, you know what? I asked Tyler if we could do 2:30, and he said okay, and I'm like, I should have.
No, I was in the middle of my AC had a leak in it, and I'm in the middle of like recharging it, and I have like a small window where it's warm enough to do before next year, and I'm like, I gotta get this done.
Yeah,
I'm literally
that
out
is
like
way more
recharging my
important
air
than this.
conditioner.
Way more important than this right now.
On September 17th, exactly 2:30 p.m. is the perfect temperature to recharge.
Dude, I just
Tyler's
got everything. So my buddy owns like an HVAC supplier, and he's like, "Yo, I'll bring you over my scale and some refrigerant, so you don't have to like buy it." And it's getting to be too cool to test your charge.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, it's right around the borderline of where you can test it and have it on. I'm like, I really want to get this done this year, and today was my day to do it.
Northeast.
So I was doing that in between everything else.
There you go.
You know.
Speaking of air
I
conditioning,
guess I don't need air conditioning right now, but I want to make sure it works for next year.
yeah,
100%.
yeah,
Absolutely.
John, are you in South Carolina full time?
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel like I thought you were traveling recently, or do you?
Well, yeah.
You're never installing outside of South Carolina, are you?
No,
well, I know you're.
I mean, it's traveling mainly just to see family out in California. Got some family issues, health issues, parents and all that. So traveling out there doing that. I was in California last year doing some craftsman training up in Northern California. But that's the last time I've really traveled to essentially work.
Got it.
But yeah.
South Carolina's hot, man.
I think that everyone probably knows you as a solo installer, a cabinet installer. I know when we spoke last, you're doing more dealing, design, selling of cabinets.
Yeah.
But what I guess was like the progression of that? I do want to speak about that, but what did your progression through the trades look like that brought you to, installing solo, and then obviously the path that you're on now?
Yeah, I think we originally talked many, many moons ago when I had a lot less gray in my beard. I started at a shop in Massachusetts, Dedham Cabinet Shop. Got to give them a shout out. Eternally grateful for what they taught me there. Moved down to South Carolina. Was working in, I guess you could say, high-end residential cabinetry shops. Then, had an opportunity to start managing, get out of a shop and start managing cabinetry installations. Started working with a company, a cabinet design firm.
I'm on a podcast.
Multiple designers, multiple installers. So we ran about 5 to 7 crews at any given time, solo crews. And so was doing that. We were going gangbusters. This is 06, right? And everything's just, there's so much money out there and buildings going nuts down here. And oh my God, this is never going to stop. Then 2008 hit and everything stopped for a bit. And that was when I went from management to literally strapping a tool belt on and getting back out there as a subcontractor installer at cutthroat rates to do anything I could to get money on the table. I was mowing lawns in the neighborhood. I was doing handyman work in the neighborhood, anything I could to keep the lights on. And eventually just sort of through, I guess, hard work, through building a name, just was able to start, and especially social media, was able to really grow to a point where I could eventually come to the realization that I didn't need to be an installer for somebody anymore. I could actually do this on my own. And I started slowly. I started doing, projects here or there where I was no longer building cabinetry. I used to build cabinetry in my garage. And then I started to realize it was a huge bottleneck. And I also no longer enjoyed working in the shop. I no longer really enjoyed the manufacturing aspect of it. I didn't get joy out of it. And then I realized, okay, I can have other people build other shops, other people, other manufacturers build cabinetry better than I could do it because they specialize in it. They could build it better, finish it better, and deliver it on site. And so, it's kind of an aha moment, but it took many, many years to realize that, to have that aha moment, like I don't need to be a Geppetto in shop, touching every little piece of wood in order to enjoy what I'm doing. And that eventually then led to pulling the plug on subcontractor installs altogether. And that was about 3 years ago, where I was forced by injury basically to say, you know what, I can't do this anymore. It's just not, it's not viable physically. It's not viable financially for me. I was allowing myself to be paid.
When you say you didn't enjoy the manufacturing anymore, was it related to the financial aspect of it?
I don't. Maybe. I think because working in a shop, I always felt undervalued. I'm sure everybody working in the shop or everybody working for somebody always feels undervalued. That's a really good question, but I don't think it was that. I think it was missing. I missed the interaction with people that you get on site in a construction site. And you also miss out on a lot of opportunities, looking back in retrospect of networking prior to social media, knowing project managers, getting to know the builders, building a name for yourself. When you're in a shop or when you're in a garage building cabinetry, your exposure is very limited to, client, to maybe a builder, but it's usually client, direct to client. I'm building it, I'm installing it. And so the network is very small. I think maybe I missed out more so on anything, I think, on the social aspect of it. Mm-hmm. Getting out there, getting my name out there. Yeah. And I got bored with it. I think I've been working in a shop then for probably a decade.
Yeah.
I just got bored with it.
I think what's interesting about the manufacturing side of it is there is this really kind of contrasting situation where we have these really big shops that can manufacture at scale. They're doing everything and you can get, like you said, maybe it's a better or at least a decent or maybe the same product that you can produce in your garage or your small shop. And then you get the guys that are doing, that have a small shop. I think of like Ken, who runs Materia. It's a smaller shop. Everything is hand built. It's piece by piece, part by part, hand manufactured. And I love that. And that is truly like what Ken is passionate about. But I wouldn't say more, but like I also love finding resources for really creative ways to accomplish something. And and the reason I ask about the financial aspect, if that played into the role, because when you're a smaller shop and you're doing a lot or you're outsourcing bits and pieces of it, like finish, your cabinetry becomes very expensive. And what I think happens is, you get into this realm of, how do I sell a product for a premium? And you're almost forced to find a way to prove to a client that yes, you're going to pay 1.5 times the cost for my cabinetry. And here's the reason why. And those reasons why are typically very emotional. They're not, it's not my finish holds up to, fire or anything that you throw at it. Right. It's like, or it's not that, you find these like little emotional things that you hope will trigger someone to be like, yeah, I love that. I want to use that. Where the reality is you could go source another large manufacturer, and if you find the right partners and you spend enough time, you can pretty much find a manufacturer for anything.
Yeah,
and it's like, and it's like, well, you can't build down to the 1/8 of an inch. It's like, no, but you could design the kitchen to maybe fit that space better, and maybe it's not down to the 1/8, but maybe it's down to the 1/4 or the 1/2 or the 1 inch. And you're just being more intentional with the way you lay something out.
Yeah. I think the other financial aspect, now that you remind me of it, was I started to realize that I could not compete from an output standpoint without a substantial amount of money with tooling up, because this was kind of on the cusp where feels like where I was on the cusp where shops were tooling up with CNCs, and we're going back 15 plus years. And I am always, I've told people I'm risk averse. And I got corrected by another successful businessman, Tim, who runs Finish Point Trim down in North Carolina. He said, John, you're not risk averse. I think you understand the risks maybe a little bit more, or you're just a little more wary of that. And so that has always been a driving factor too. Whereas I started to realize, okay, now I'm going to need to get a shop. Now I need to get a CNC. I'm going to need to get finished equipment. I'm going to have to start hiring people. And that personally has always been way too much bandwidth for me. I've always enjoyed, I enjoy working with people. I have always feared getting big and having to employ people, and then, having lived through 2008, having to let people go potentially. And so that was a huge factor, again, in retrospect, that drove me to realize, okay, how can I provide the same level of quality without actually, again, cutting the plywood myself, without making the doors myself. So again, and then you start outsourcing the drawers. You start outsourcing the doors anyway, and outsourcing the finish. What the next logical step is to just literally design it and have it built to spec within a 16th nowadays with a lot of these shops. So that was the decision.
I do something similar at this point too, and there's certain cabinets that I'll build, but it's like when you start understanding your rate and what it costs to build these and your margins, and understanding that you're not a volume-based contractor, it's like you can't live in either world. The numbers keep going up, but the margins aren't that great because everything's one-off. You're not set up, or you invest in the systems and then your margins are lower and you have to basically resolve yourself to selling volume. And it's like, what space do I live in? Where do I want to live? And it does make it difficult. And I know friends who I speak with who build cabinets, who own cabinet shops, run cabinet shops. And it's like, yeah, these are really expensive high-end cabinets. When you look at the margins on them, a lot of times they're not even as much as the bigger volume-based contractors because their labor rates are so low. Yeah. So when you first went that path and you started outsourcing, and you have basically, I would assume that you're a dealer for cabinet companies at that point, are you just installing? Are you installing for other designers, or are you just installing kitchens that you designed and sold at that point?
That was a great point. At that point, I was doing subcontract installing, I would say full time. And these projects, I would do in my, I call off hours, where I was waking up 4:30 in the morning, working on design, working in the afternoons, working late at night to get pricing done, to get drawings done, to, send emails to clients. And so it was a very slow burn, and I'd like to think it was intentional. Probably not. It was just risk management, where I knew that the install work was there. It was bread and butter. And anytime I would land one of these larger projects, and they started to get larger and larger, where I could do one a year, and it was what I would call that sort of gravy. It would just go on the top. Wouldn't, I wouldn't have to rely on that money so much. And so it took a while to do that, but I was working full time as an installer that entire time for, I would say, since I started really, the first large project I designed and had manufactured as a dealer was 2018.
So when you were an installer, was it for a cabinet company, or were you still your own business, just being subcontracted by other people to install?
I was still in my own business. It was JCH Cabinets and Installations. And so I was mainly a installer for one designer in particular. Good designer, learned a lot, and that also then started to, I think, resent, and maybe that's probably a strong word, but I started or realized that, okay, I'm adding a lot of value on the back end, and also on the management aspect. What am I doing here? Because builders are now calling me in off hours talking about scheduling. Builders are requesting me on their future projects. Builders are now hiring this designer because they want me on the project, and that was actually named in a contract without me even knowing. That's how far it got. It was like, okay, I've clearly got the name here. I've clearly made a reputation for myself in this town, but it took getting injured to eventually realize that I could no longer sustain full-time install.
Do you think that you could have developed the same reputation had it been a different designer than this designer? Like, was it
probably not? No, sorry, didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
No, but like, was it that much? So I'm trying to convey like how you were, for people who don't understand how you're bringing value to the relationship for a designer who's designing and selling cabinets. And like, for me, my brain goes to, all right, you can field modify issues, you can help with the design, and you can help, redline, provide shop drawings, pinch points, all of that stuff. But like, what were you doing to provide so much value? And was it that much value that you could have taken the work from any designer and established that reputation?
Lot to unpack there. I think what people saw on Instagram many years ago when I started was the value that it would bring on the field modifications. It was just there was never a dull moment. And that's not a knock against this cabinet designer. It's just cabinet design in general. There's so many parts and pieces, and I'm learning this now. Again, it's ironic that I'm on the back end and front end where I'm you're right. It's just so much that can be missed. There's so much minutia in cabinetry. And so I used to just get, kind of bent out of shape and go, another damn modification I need to make. But I got really good at it. And so the value I think I brought was always moving the ball forward on these projects, and also never raising any red flags, never making a stink out of it to anybody, because just talking with somebody the other day, a good installer not only knows what to say, they know what not to say. You don't want to raise a client's, or any red flags or cause any alarm to a client unnecessarily. You can get frustrated, but you can also make changes, make phone calls out of earshot, out of sight from a client before things can really blow up. And because it's a very stressful situation for clients. And when you're building a custom home, it's a substantial investment. And so they're really keyed in once cabinets show up anyway. And so if one thing can happen early on, I've always said, if you give somebody a toehold, things can go sideways. And so your best bet as an installer is to always just kind of keep the ball rolling, keep a positive attitude in front of the client. You can raise hell on the back end if you want, but also have answers and have the ability to, field modify and keep the projects rolling without sacrificing any of the quality. And I think that's along with maintaining schedules, communicating well with the builders with regards to schedules, and more importantly, project managers, because they're the ones that make the world go round, and they're the ones who start to really request you on projects because you don't come up with problems. And that's what allowed me to sort of build the name. Unfortunately, fortunately, because of this designer that I worked with, it was with the higher end builders. And so I was exposed to a wider array or wider range of high end builders that I got to make my name with as well.
So when you were making developing those, like your system, your process, the relationship with this designer, and all these field modifications and these fixes, who was paying for that?
At first, I think I was, because I believe our very first podcast convo, and even prior to that, you were talking to me like, dude, you're not charging enough for all these modifications. You were just like, I was leaving a lot of money on the table because I wanted to just tend to be a people pleaser, and I was just doing the work. Let's go. Come on, let's go. And I was leaving, I think, a lot of money on the table. And that's historically, I think, was a problem for me as an installer, as I wasn't, I think, charging enough for the field mods, but also just on the front end to go, okay, this is what this install should cost. And so I don't think I was tracking my time properly. Then I started to really, I think, charge more for modifications, but ultimately I think that I let too much time pass and too much resentment build up. So yeah.
So when you would run into an issue like that, the conversation was with the designer. You suggested potential fixes, and
Yes.
then was the designer paying for the extra time to make those?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
That makes sense. Because that was going to be my question, where it's like, I understand. I ran into this on my last job. Well, one of my last jobs, where there were so many issues with the cabinet designs, and there was a designer for the kitchen who supplied the cabinets and as well, and they were all custom. And my contract with the customer was essentially T&M. And so all of these fixes the customer was paying for, but at the same time, it's like they already bought custom cabinets. And in my opinion, that shouldn't be on the customer to pay that fee. So it's like, I understand not making a fuss and not raising concern, but at what point do you have to, where it's like, hey, I have to protect myself in this situation, I have to protect my product that I'm putting out there, and also it's either me eating these costs or the customer eating these costs at this point.
Yeah, I think rarely would the customer, which was at this point, and typically would be the custom builder. They were the one contracting with the cabinet design firm. Anytime that a cost would be passed up the food chain, essentially, would be because they hadn't communicated something properly. It's happened before. Oh, we've added shiplap to each wall. Well, we just lost 1.5 inches overall on a run, and so we now need to make some cabinet modifications. And I think that, again, now being where I am and being where he was, there comes a point in time where you're going to absorb so much. Okay, a couple hundred here, a couple hundred there.
Yeah.
I think you're just going to absorb. You've got that contingency or slippage maybe in your pricing to go. All right, we're not even going to bark up that tree and burn a bridge potentially with this builder. So most of the time, I would say those modifications would not be passed along to the client. It just wouldn't fly.
Yeah, which I think is the right move. And like, I think that when you're looking at it, I always say, like, in a perfect world, they're custom cabinets. You don't need field modifications, but shit happens. Things change. You can't account. Like, when you start designing a kitchen, not from the overall design, but like to order cabinets or to have somebody else manufacture cabinets, the amount of design work and shop drawings and calculations and just planning that goes into it is absolutely insane. And it is so easy to miss a couple of things where it's like, yeah, it's almost unavoidable to not have some field modifications. But at the end of the day, they are custom cabinets. Everything shouldn't have to need a fucking modification. Like, at some point, it's like, well, we could have just got paid for stock cabinets at this point if we're just going to modify and customize everything.
Agreed. And sometimes it feels like that. You're like, oh, here we go, cutting another cabinet again. And that's what it felt. That's what it started to feel like. Whether or not that was the reality, but yeah, at times it felt like, Jesus, what the hell am I doing here?
What do you think? Like, was if someone said, John, like, what was the number one reason that you had to modify all this stuff? Is it just lack of planning, lack of supervision, lack of experience? Like,
it was definitely not lack of experience. He was very good at what he did. I think at times, again, now that the shoe is on the other foot, right? And I'm in his shoes, but I'm also doing the install. I think he wasn't doing a ton of volume, but I mean, 5 custom homes alone, can be a massive amount of cabinetry. And so things can get overlooked. I think and there's only so much you do have your manufacturers that are looking out for you, and that during the order processing, they can be very good at that. Shit just slips through the cracks. And I think that perspective of now being on the other end of it, realizing, oh my God, the sheer volume of little things you need to check for and double check for when you are ordering manufactured custom cabinets it can be overwhelming at times. I'm in the midst of that right now. Just getting lost in the weeds.
It's insane. And like, no matter how many times I do it, you have a system, but it's always one off. Like, and it
Absolutely.
seems as though you're going through that order acknowledgement 6 times. And even on the final pass, you're still noticing shit where it's like, oh, thank God I caught that. And
Yeah.
it's like you were ready to place that order. And it's like you could note every single thing that you've ever ran into, but it'd
Yeah.
be a full book on, like, it's almost as if you just have to continue to go through it and rely on your experience as an installer. I feel more than a designer to understand what has to happen in that kitchen.
I couldn't agree more, because I think a standard order for me right now is 50 to 70 pages. That's including shop drawings. And that's a lot. And that takes, I would say, a minimum of 4 rounds per room. And so it ends up being, a tome of paperwork. And you're right, on the last go around on a previous project, just something caught my eye. I don't know what it was. But the kitchen originally was like Benjamin Moore sheeple, and then ended up changing to, or it was in my mind, ended up being a black. And that was literally on the last acknowledgement. It was like, I'm just going to send an email real quick and dig through some of my correspondence, and holy hell. Yeah. I mean, just, so sometimes it can be glaringly obvious, staring at you in the face for 4 rounds, or it can be something in the minutia at the very end where, like, how did I miss something that's stupid as well, or that small? And so, yeah, it's a one-off every time. I don't think there is, when you're truly custom like that, and you're actually designing U-shape, even, U-shaped drawers to go around plumbing, every little 16th just starts to add up in time. That can eat you alive. And I still have yet to find an efficient way to do it. I do have help with order writing. I have help with drafting at times, but at the end of the day, the buck stops at my desk, and I have to review that myself, because I'm going to be the one putting it in, essentially.
Yeah. I
just send a bunch of scribe molding.
Problem solved. I mean, done. And there's nothing I can't modify anyway.
Dude, I feel like the big things are easier to miss than the small things, where it's like we have the wrong door style on there because you're so hyper focused on the little shit. And it's like you said, the finish or the paint color or the door style, or like these are inset. Like, it's so easy to miss those big things because you just assume they're taken care of, and you're so hyper focused on all the details that sometimes you forget about the glaringly obvious crap.
Yeah.
Well, I think we tend to assume things, and I was making an example of the things, like sometimes I'll look at scope and I'm like, you know what, I'll just let the sub handle that and not check it, or not give him the resources. Like, or even a super. I've told the story before where it's like I'll spend a year in pre-construction and then hand off the drawings to a super that, hey, here's a week to review them, and and then they miss something. I'm like, how'd you miss that? It's like, dude, you've been looking at these plans for 14 months. I've had 7 days. And, and I think the reality, like, and the argument there is like, well, this is why you hire professionals. This is, if you're spending all the time figuring something out, or recessed light layout, for example, it's like the electrician owns that. It's like, sure, they own it, but I want to do it because I want to make sure that we're prepped for them. Because if they get there and then they do the layout, they're either going to say stuff's in the way, or they're going to make modifications that I don't like. So sure, like they could do layout too, but ultimately, we want to make sure it's correct. And and if we're ultimately, if the buck stops with us, then we ultimately need to guide the project in a way that nets the result that we're looking for.
And very similar to, you had Charles 323 Woodwork on, recently, and he and I think are wired very similarly in that especially when it comes to low volt and cabinetry, we just control it. I run my own low volt wiring where I need to stub it out, where I need it to run to, and then I will very clearly tell the electricians where they need to run their 110 for my drivers. But end of the day, like with low volt, I'm going to run that when it's on brand new, because I just need to control it. But yeah, because we are so much more intimately involved with these projects than anybody else just coming on and looking at the plans, because we know it backwards and forwards. And so sometimes it is easier to just and faster more efficient. I guess.
The other thing is, I don't know about you, but when you spend that much time and there's that many details on the design, and then you walk away from it and you start working on something else, and then the cabinets are made and it's time to install, there's a lot to either remember, or where do you start, or how did you intend this to be, where it's like, I got to relearn all of this at this point. And it's like, I know that I did this for a reason, but 3 months later, what was my reason for doing that? And it's almost relearning that entire design in order to install it correctly and like actually implement all of those details that you so methodically planned out.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, sometimes it could be 6 months because, I've ordered cabinets. Lead times were at one point, 4 months, but builder wasn't ready. So it sat in storage for 2 months. And so by the time you get back, then half a year is gone.
Yeah.
And you have to and that's why I've always had the mentality, I'm going to start in the bathrooms first, just to get my head back and wrapped around this project and get ahead of steam. It was that way even when I was a subcontractor installer. I would start in bathrooms just to get ahead of steam, just to get comfortable in the space, and then start looking around at the bigger, larger areas. I know other guys are wired differently. They like the bigger sites first, the kitchen, pantries, laundries, all that. But I think for me, that process started to be like, okay, if I am relearning this, and you're trying to refresh your memory, start small.
Yeah, lower stakes.
Really. Yep, exactly.
So I can most certainly relate to the position that you were in, and how much work you were doing, and probably looking at the amount of sleep lost, the money that you're making, the relationships that you're preserving, and just the overall dynamic of the relationship and the position you were in, and building resentment for that relationship. And I know that you said, well, maybe it's not resentment, but I think at the end of the day, a lot like there are a lot of opportunities to resent people in our industry that we work with, because you're looking at what you're doing and the effort that you're putting forth and all the care that you take. When people aren't putting forth the same effort, it's very easy to get frustrated by that. So once you felt that way and you decided to go another route, like what did that look like for you?
Well, and here's the thing, a lot of that resentment, it was self-inflicted because I never understood my value. I was always so afraid to just ask for more. I was always afraid to just sit across the table. I had, I guess, a scarcity mindset, if you want to call it that. I was afraid that there might not be work there if I asked for more, if I asked for, substantially more, even though the work would have been there. And so ultimately what happened is I was just in a bad place. I was physically breaking down. My knee was killing me. I had golfer's elbow. I could barely lift the drill. I had a pinched nerve on my neck and a migraine. I was sitting in my chair in the morning drinking coffee in tears. I was crying in pain. I looked at my coffee and just said, is this it? Is this it? I had those words. I'll never forget them. And it's very moving. It was scary because it's where's my next paycheck going to come? I have to call this builder right now and tell him I can't finish this job. I've never walked off of a project. We're about 80% done, getting into the real nitty gritty, the trim, the final details. And I said, hey, listen, I can't finish this job. I'm going to be there a little later. I'm going to pick up my tools, walk you through what needs to be done. Done. And so it was a culmination of resenting somebody that probably didn't deserve as much resentment, because I wasn't able to fully negotiate because I was scared.
Yeah.
And then ultimately being physically unable to do a job anymore. And, he just posted something about Mike Rowe. He had a calendar and he was marking the days off of the month, right? Like where's the work? I got to fill 30 days up, or I got to fill 20 days up this month. And I was so terrified I wouldn't be able to fill those days. And next thing you know, like the days were getting filled. And the mind shift from being sort of hand to mouth, or more accurately, not needing to be on the tools every day to have income or have money coming in, took a long time to get used to. It's taken probably a year or two to really wrap my head around. Like I don't need to be screwing stuff to a wall right now in order to be profitable. That's taking some time.
So
injury was.
Is that like from a budgeting perspective for yourself personally and from a business mindset where it's like, I don't necessarily have a paycheck coming in every 2 weeks?
Yeah, I think that's it, because you get used to that steady paycheck, even as a subcontractor. And then once that stops, yeah, you have to learn. And I was always, I think, very good at putting money aside, with regards to clients' money first. It's their money, it's not mine. But at the same time, when you're not used to that, and the money isn't sort of, quote unquote, coming in every 2 weeks, it's just a real, it can play with your mind a little bit.
Yeah.
I had a real hard time adjusting to it.
So you, at this point now, you're pretty much fully off the tools?
No, that's just it. I am still doing my installs. But I'm not on the tools nearly as much, and my body is thanking me for it. I haven't been really. I wrapped up my last install probably 2 months ago, so I've had another lull. Call it a lull, but I have another 3 or 4 projects are going to be landing, back to back to back, and so in between jobs, it's when I really start to dive into the design and sales aspect, measures, the emails, the business part of it. And then, come Wednesday next week, the rubber is going to hit the road. And I've got another one landing probably a month or 2 after that. And then again, they're going to start falling like dominoes.
So in that situation, when you go into sales mode or back to install mode, does the other side of it suffer? Like if you're installing back to back to back, like you're doing less of the design and selling product?
It's a major concern, and that's where, because you can only do so much as one person, right. And so, it's a concern. But I have started to let go on and not control or feel like I needed to control so much of the pricing aspect and the order processing, order writing process. I've got somebody who is just a whiz at it, and who can do it literally in half the amount of time, probably a quarter of the time that I can do it. So that frees me up even more to then be back out in the field. I have people helping with drafting. And so I don't have to get so into the minutia on everything. I do at the end, where I am doing final revisions on drawings, final order processing. And so it frees me up, but it is a concern. And it is something that I am always having to then work a little longer, a little later, a little earlier when I am out in the field, in order to make sure that I don't fail my clients, and then I'm falling behind. And so, it's a great question, because something's gonna suffer, especially when I'm out in the field 8 hours a day, and then on the road another 2 hours on top of that.
Yeah, I can also relate to that, and I think that the struggle is where it's like when you're so immersed in one thing, it's difficult to pick back up, or it's like, hey, I'm going to step away from this design and go spend X amount of days in the field. How do I dive back into that design? And the loss of efficiency, or retraining yourself to kind of enter where you last left off. Do you, as far as, so like from a podcast perspective, and obviously people listening to this, where it's like, hey, we want to be in the trades, we'd love to be a cabinet installer, like that seems like a viable career path. Obviously there's challenges with that. Even owning your own company, being a solo installer, it's like, hey, I can charge essentially whatever I want, but at the end of the day, it's still like, I can relate, it's still one of you. Like you're limited as to how much money you can make. So you're now selling the kitchens, you are making money on the design, the planning, the markups, being a dealer, and also the install. Is this proving to be more lucrative as far as just overall money that you're making, or is it providing you like a way to make money without physically killing yourself as much?
The latter mainly. It allows me it's freed me up to make decent money, and has also given me, my body back.
Yeah.
And has allowed me to travel a little more, to see my family, have more flexibility in my schedule. As far as guys getting into the trades, or guys and gals getting into trades, you can make really good money as a cabinet installer, more than I ever could. And that, again, that was a drawback of mine. The guys nowadays in Charleston are doing quite well, and I'm happy to pay it, because a good installer, I think a lot of cabinet designers know, are very hard to come by and are worth every damn penny. And so, if you want to get into this market, if you want to get into cabinet installing specifically, I think you can make a very good living. Quite a few people that who are just solo guys. The guys run crews. It depends on just how much you want to take on. But as a solo owner operator, you can do quite well, especially now because there is such a shortage of skilled cabinet installers. Period. I say this every time. There's probably 2 guys, maybe 3 in this town, Charleston, that I could consider plug and play. If I go down, or if I don't need to be on site, I can put 2 of these 3 guys in it and they can finish it. Guess what? They're locked up. They got work for the next year. And so you can make a very good living doing cabinetry installation. So ultimately, I think I got long in the tooth. 49 now. I was 44, 45 when I started to really break down, and I probably wasn't just eating right or taking good care of myself, but I was still in good shape. That's when my body started to break down. So you have a viable career path, getting in the trade, starting early, and starting in your 30s if you want as an installer, and then eventually transition into something else.
Hey guys, we're going to take a quick break from the podcast and remind you to head over to moderncraftsman.co. You can find more information about us. You can download some freebies. We got a labor burden calculator as well as our pre-construction agreement up there. But most importantly is hit that subscribe button, sign up for our newsletter. This is where you're going to get all of the information behind the scenes. You're going to get information prior to podcast release. You're also going to get information on stuff that we're working on that we're just not sharing with the general public. So if you want to know more, head over, hit that subscribe button, or at least take advantage of the free downloads that we have on the website. So let's get back to the conversation. Okay. I'm curious about the product side. It's something that I think about a lot, and going back to my comment earlier, but so talk about that side of it, because obviously, I agree with you. A good installer, they're difficult to find, especially guys that, it's funny, I'm looking up, I'm sitting in our studio, and Doug must have wrote, "Done is better than perfect" up on the wall. And it's funny because I think a lot of guys get trapped in the not moving the ball forward because they're trying to perfect something to 100%. But that for you to be such a high quality installer, you having a short list of people that can produce that, I would have to think that the product has to be a pretty high level. In terms of you don't want to be installing shit. And don't get me wrong, no. I've seen some guys install some shit cabinetry and make it look like $1 million. And, and you can totally do it. But I know that's not, what John wants to put his name on, and that's not what you're all about. So when you got into the side of design and or product sourcing, what was that process like, and how did you, ultimately land on a manufacturer or a number of manufacturers?
Yeah, I was really fortunate. Again, having touched so many styles of cabinetry and companies over the years, I knew what I wanted and knew what I had to carry. Was fortunate to come across some guys who I consider very good friends up in New Jersey, the Stonington Kitchens guys. Justin and Tyler Sachs, and they are a dealer for a company called Country Craft. And, we related very well as far as installers. They had already paved that trail as installers turned designers, and they're phenomenal designers. Going so far as to design lights in their kitchens. And they were talking up Country Craft strongly. And I looked at the product. I've seen what they were doing. Again, as a fellow installer, I knew I could trust their word more than anything, because a sales rep is going to tell you, sales rep is going to sales rep, right? They're just going to say what it's the best product in the world. But a installer is going to tell you, the real deal. They're going to let you know the good and the bad. And they had a lot of good things to say about this particular brand. I was able to go up to the manufacturer, see what they were doing, see what they're capable of, see some of their work, and that sold me on it. And I don't deal in the low end of cabinetry. I don't want to spend my time in that area. I don't think it's time well spent.
Sure.
I'd rather spend more time selling and working with a cabinet that I can be proud of, and that I could honestly sell to a client, look them in the eye, say, this is very good cabinetry, and we're going to put it in. It's going to be the best kitchen you're going to get, and say that honestly, because I don't want to operate. I don't want to say most people operating dishonestly, but I think there are a lot of clients that end up being disappointed in the overall product because they don't necessarily know what they're getting on the front end.
Well, I think the Stonington brothers are a great example, because I remember following them years ago and finding out, I thought they were custom cabinet makers. And it's like, no, we just designed this and we source the product. And that's what I'm talking about earlier. That's what I was talking about earlier is you can be a really talented designer and work with a space and a product and find out how to make that product fit that space. Where it's like, I'm sure there's times where they measure a room and it's like, man, it'd be great if we did custom cabinetry, but we can work with what we have if we do X, Y, Z. And it's like, and end up, and you look at their stuff and it's great. Like I agree with you. Like their design is fantastic and they do a great job with it. And it looks as though it's a completely customized product for each individual space.
And it is, because that line is fully custom. I mean, to a 16th, 32nd, if you want to get really nitty gritty, but it is custom to a 16th. And so, custom paint colors, custom stain matches, you name it. They are fully highly custom. So everything you see is, so there are no stock cabinets. I mean, you can order stock from them, I'm sure. Stock,
but they're a big manufacturer.
I would say they're mid-range. So I wouldn't call them massive. Yeah, but
how big's their shop?
They probably have 75 to 100 in their shop.
Okay.
So big, right? Yeah.
Big shop.
So it's a big shop in Pennsylvania.
And when you toured them, like, so comparing to, maybe the smaller cabinet shops you've worked for, or even building stuff in your garage, like when you toured them, besides size, what were the things that you looked around and said, oh, this is how they're operating so efficiently?
More than anything, lead times, and they were pretty decent on their lead times, but I'm a stickler for the details, and they do inset very well, and their margins are, I would say, some of the best I've come across. And when you're selling inset cabinetry, if your margins aren't good, you're trash. And every one of them is actually hand sanded to fit. So every door is custom sized and custom fit to the opening of the face frame. And that to me is these people care. The finish quality was great.
Sorry, I guess I meant more on the technical side. Yeah. So like when you're looking around at them actually fabricating, like what are they doing that stands out as being able to, like allows them to be more efficient than a small shop?
I would say just the sheer amount of people they have there, the machinery they have, multiple CNCs, edge banders, all state-of-the-art equipment that I think a lot of maybe some of the smaller shops don't have here locally. They dovetail. A lot of people tend to look down on half-inch plywood. I think those are people who haven't had to install 3/4-inch plywood cabinets, inset cabinets. They blind dovetail. They dovetail all their half-inch ply boxes together, 3/4 finished ends. So I think they've got the systems down, and on the front end, the order processing. You get assigned a person who is very knowledgeable, who who was, pushing a broom in a shop and is now understands cabinetry and cabinetry installation quite well. And so the support on the front end is really strong. Like there are two individuals that I work with who understand cabinetry and understand cabinetry installation, and cabinetry manufacturing as well, because that's what they do. And so it's a second set of eyes. So on the front end, it was the support aspect. On the back end, it was the quality of the product alone. And so was I looking at overall efficiencies in a shop? No. End of the day, what does everybody ask when you're selling or buying cabinets? When will they be here?
Yeah, right.
So what's the lead time? End of the day, the quality's there, the lead time's there, and the price is a decent price point. Let's go.
Yeah, and I think that there's a lot of shops who do have the capacity. Like, are they willing to make what you want? And they're like, if you're a custom shop, big or small, everyone's going to be able to make the cabinets. Like if you have a system or drawings or whatever program they're using to be able to supply them with what they need, the communication should be there to be able to make custom cabinets. I think it is like an efficiency, a turnaround, a quality perspective.
Yeah. There are some shops here locally that are just absolute. I mean, they turn out some absolute phenomenal product. Don't get me wrong. They are badass. And so it's just that I can't go to them to ask them for cabinetry. And so I have to search out other manufacturers.
So they want you to buy direct from them rather than be a dealer?
As far as local shops?
Yeah.
They probably wouldn't even sell to me because it's essentially competition, and I wouldn't ask them anyway.
Yeah.
I did do that with a local shop for a while, but ultimately I found it to be more efficient to deal with, with actual manufacturers that were geared up for a drop ship when it comes down to it.
So
they're much more efficient.
So why not just sell kitchens?
I don't know. I think that's a great question, man, because I haven't been out in the field, and I'm starting to realize that, something feels like it's lacking right now. Okay. I need to get dusty. I need to start cutting and fitting stuff. But also I think I need to get into the teaching a little more, which, Instagram offered me that avenue with stories where I would actually, share my day and share how I was going about things. So that's lacking right now. And so I'm sitting in front of a computer for 8 hours a day, making phone calls, doing design, which is great. It's, it's what I needed to do in order to salvage my body and mind. But I'm itching to get back out in the field. Ultimately, that will be the goal. I will design and sell kitchens.
Yeah.
But right now, it's a nice. I have a happy medium between the two, and I still enjoy getting out there in the field and getting that instant feedback from clients, from builders, and from interior designers as well.
I always tell myself that, and then I feel like once I start doing it, I'm like, this is a pain in the ass. And I wonder if I say that to almost protect myself or have like one foot in both worlds, so I don't necessarily have to make a decision where it's like, well, if this comes across my plate and it works for me today, sure. But then, I'd probably be better off if I just made a decision or was like, hey, this is what I'm going to do. But I continue to tell myself, like, I enjoy this, I enjoy that, I enjoy the freedom of being able to do all of it, where I think that it's probably just a cop-out on my end to a certain extent.
Are you me? Yeah, I feel totally seen right now because I am lying to myself. I think I'm lying to myself because there are times when I find myself in the field where I am completely aggravated and frustrated.
Yeah.
And it's been really eye-opening because I've been fortunate enough to start hiring guys and fly guys into town to work with me, and also hire guys locally to work and do installs for me and with me. And I've realized just how much happier they are doing it than I am. And it's kind of, it's eye-opening because I just get so bent out of shape, I think, because I want it to be so perfect because I designed it. It's built to spec, and yet something is still wrong. And these younger guys or these other guys who are installing for me are just so much more even keeled about it. And I just go 0 to 60 and I need to, and so maybe that's a sign too, or yeah, I need to do it less, get out in the field less.
Yeah.
Because I could be lying to myself.
I mean, I also don't like, if I don't, there's certain aspects of the project that I don't enjoy. Like I'm just tired of setting shit up and breaking it down and not having space to work. Like I don't actually mind doing the work. It's just all the other crap cleaning up at the end. Like it seems to get in the way of what I want to be actually doing. And now that I'm not working 100 hours a day, it's like, yeah, if I actually want to put time aside so that I'm setting up and breaking down during work hours, I don't have that much time in a day to get work done. So it seems as though I'm getting less done. Obviously there's an efficiency there with experience that's better, but like I hate sitting and doing what you're doing with cabinets and designing and going through all those details and order acknowledgments. Like once you get in it, it's okay, but then I just want to be done with it. Like I don't want to spend 4 or 5 days in a row just going through this, and I need to remember this, and I need to shoot this email, and I need to change this and this draw, and it's like papers everywhere. That to me also is not enjoyable. So it's like, where's the balance? What works? I don't know if I truly would want to be doing one entirely.
Yeah. So maybe that is too, where I just start to get tired of one, and then I get pulled out in the field and I get to do another, and then I get tired of that, and then I get pulled back out in the field and I get out in the office and I get to rest a little bit, get my mind straight, maybe take some time off, travel, see the family. And so again, right now, I think it is a good balance. I could be lying to myself. I'd like to think that I still have it in me that I can get out in the field and hit it really hard. We don't have to deal so much with the setup and breakdown in the larger homes that we work at. And so we can keep our tools on site. So that's not so much of a pain. I have realized that having guys on site with me has changed my output, but also my outlook and my attitude, because it helps me kind of self-correct, go, okay, it's not that big of a deal. And we can also kind of team up at the end and clean up. And so I am learning that it is nicer, and I'm learning to let go. It's nicer to have guys, have people in general help me get the work done, and we get it done faster.
Yeah.
As well.
I think it'd be nice if like the help could just be summoned like when you need the help. And there was
Harry Potter,
right? There was like there was no responsibility other than that, where it's like, all right, so now I want help for installing, so now I need to take on minimum one full-time employee, and now it's like, okay, my entire business and my entire life just changed, and it's like, well, maybe I'll entertain the sub model, but then there's the challenges that go along with that, and if you don't feed the subs enough, and where their priorities are, and who's going to show up. It is like the world that you live in is definitely a struggle. I feel that like in your position with the teaching and everything else, like it would be sick to be able to sell kitchens to people and be like, hey, I'm going to come consult for you, or like consult on the install. So you're getting some of that field experience and time in the field. And it's like, I think that you would have enough of a network that people would hire you to design kitchens and then help their installers install kitchens and still pay a premium for that. Because at the end of the day, I think that there's plenty of people with customers that it's not necessarily about how inexpensively you can do it, but how well and what that turnaround looks like.
Yeah. Never thought of that, honestly.
John,
you think too locally sometimes.
Sorry, finish your point.
No, go ahead. No, I did.
You said a couple minutes ago, and I've been wanting to come back to it, about the 1/2-inch boxes, because I feel like when you said that, a lot of people are like, no, absolutely not. Got to be 3/4. What did you mean by until someone's installed the 3/4-inch box?
Perfect example. Recent project I just installed. It was a 3/4 inch side, 3/4 inch back. Sometimes there were boxes within boxes. So you had a 3/4 inch drawer box within, a 3/4 inch space. It's hard to explain, but heavy doesn't equal strong. And I have installed cabinetry from a company called Premier Custom Built there in Pennsylvania. I would say they're the top tier cabinet manufacturer in the country. They do everything you want, anything you want. They custom stitch all their veneers. They do high gloss. They do literally anything you name.
What's their name?
Premier Custom Built.
Okay.
And I was fortunate enough to install their product for this other designer. They use 1/2 inch. They use 3/4 on finished ends. Another cabinet line called QCCI. They're in Pennsylvania as well. Quality custom cabinetry. 1/2 inch boxes, 3/4 finished ends, 1/2 inch backs. And so again, heavy doesn't necessarily equal as strong. You can have a 1/2 inch box that is built every bit as strong, every bit as square, and that will wear and tear as good as a 3/4 inch plywood box, period. And when you're lifting a 1/2 inch, a box that's built out of 1/2 inch, with maybe say a 3/4, you notice it. It's a lot lighter. It just takes, it's less strain on your body. I think it's less strain on the installer. And so you get a higher end finish and higher end quality because your installer is not struggling so much just to get a damn box on the wall or to move a box. And so, yeah, people are going to turn their nose up at it. And I used to as well. And it's one of those things where you start to realize like, yeah, you're focusing on the wrong thing.
I mean, I might take this a step further where it's like, I think about
1/4 inch boxes.
Let's do it.
1/8 inch cardboard.
Come on, man.
No, I mean, so I've installed some of those German kitchens before, and it's literally 1/2 inch laminate sides. Sometimes it's 3/4, and it's an 1/8 inch back. And people are like,
yeah, that's crazy. I would do that. Yeah.
Well, sure, but I could argue the same thing where it's like, dude, who cares? It's got, they have the bracket hardware with the teeth on it that you hook onto a steel rail that gets bolted to the stud. That 1/8 inch back is literally just so you don't see the wall. That's it.
Yeah.
And it sits tight against the wall, and once it's up, it's fine. And a couple of years ago, my brother installed an IKEA kitchen in his house, and people were like, "I can't believe you let your brother install an IKEA kitchen." I'm like, I mean, we're expensive. Like, he wanted to do something less expensive. I went to his house. I'm like, shit, man, this thing looks good.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I spent a good half hour going through it. I'm like, there's some nice ass hardware in this thing. And like it was silly. I took a handful of photos. Like, all the doors are bored on both sides, so that way they only make one door that you can use left or right. But they make these really slick color matched plugs that go into the hole that you don't use. And I'm like, okay. It's not, that wouldn't be like an ultra luxury. Like, you would never get away with that in a multi-million-dollar home. But this kitchen looks damn nice. And to most people, they don't give a shit what it looks like on the inside of the door.
Yeah. Even discerning clients though, again, having installed Premier Custom Built and knowing what it costs or what clients are being charged for it. It's a domestic 1/2 inch ply, again, 3/4 finished ends, 1 inch thick face frames, 1 inch thick doors. All right. It's quality. It is some of the highest quality that I've ever touched. And I used to be like, how are these people getting away with this? But ultimately, man, I think people are, and personally myself, I was focused on the wrong things. Again, I'll say it before, I'll say it again. Heavy doesn't necessarily equal strong or strength. And you can have a 1/2 inch box that's going to be every bit as strong as a 3/4 inch box. And so for me, I don't see the problem with that.
I think so many cabinet companies have just been set up for 3/4 for so long. And it's like your entire, like all of your tooling, all of your design software is set up for 3/4, and like making that change would be tough. I think that obviously, there's a lot of companies who don't use domestic ply as well. And I think going to anything less than 3/4, it's like things get a little bit bowed, which makes it tough. But if things are well built and there's joinery, I don't think that there's a need for anything thicker than that. I think it just comes down to like how you're assembling, what your tooling looks like, what your design looks like, as far as strength goes.
Yeah, and especially on finished ends, those will be 3/4.
Yeah.
And so at the end of the day, do that. I have zero issues with it, and have had zero issues with it.
Yeah, I guess, Tyler, that's a great point. I think one of the reasons we went to, like, our boxes are all 3/4, and frankly, we also were doing full dust bottoms under every drawer.
Yeah,
which is bananas. Like,
Yeah.
and it was and I think
weight.
a ton of weight, a ton of weight. And I think we've actually got rid of the dust bottoms recently. And when we did it, it was like, well, our selling was like, when you pull the drawer out and the spatula gets stuck. Well, not
It's
with
a good one though.
Not with our cabinets. Yeah. We have a full 3/4 inch, 17-pound dust bottom.
There you go. But here's the thing, just to be clear, we are talking about inset cabinetry. We're not talking about full overlay, full access. We're talking about inset cabinetry with a face frame. Right? Yeah. And just so everybody knows out there. But yeah, I mean, dust bottoms, again, 3/4 box, 3/4 dust bottoms, that's a brick that you have to lug to and from the site. And then your installer has to lug to. And so, yeah, it adds up.
Yeah. I mean, that's a great point. Like, I where I was going with that is I think, there's so much redundancy where, I think about my first house. It was a 1950s Cape, and the cabinetry was plywood and, pine that was finished nailed together. And the thing, like, the kitchen worked, had a sink, had storage, didn't have a ton of adjustability, but had storage. Right. Yeah. And it was fine. And you think about now, it's a cabinet. It's the base, it's the cabinet box, then it's the drawers, then it's the doors, then it's the finish panels, then it's the fillers. And there's just, my point is, like, there's so much redundancy. And if you you look at it, it's like when, almost every box that comes out of our shop is a box and then has a finished panel. And, and it's like, well, couldn't you just finish the panel that you're also using for the cabinet? It's like, yeah, you could. But we said that was, that was too complicated because of the way we go about finishing it. We want the box and
or
we want
assembly.
Or assembly, yeah. Where it's like, how do you hide the screws or right. And it, sometimes you could argue the other way, but most of the times it makes sense to have a finished panel be a finished panel and the box be the box. But we are in this world of just like complete redundancy and, parts upon parts just to accomplish, ultimately the same thing. And, I saw this example. I saw this building the other day, and they had this quote unquote crown molding detail. And it was just, it literally was a square box, and then it stepped out an inch, went up 8 inches, stepped out another inch, went up 4 inches, stepped out another inch, 6 inches, stepped out another inch. And then it was this multi-tier thing. And I'm like, and I'm looking at it, I'm like, someone drew that and was like, that's a good detail.
That's a great thing.
It's like, why not just make the building square?
Yeah.
Like you would have saved all that money and all that aggravation, and ultimately probably would have looked better because it would have been
make the box a little taller. Yeah.
And I think that, like, in cabinet making, it's, or not in cabinet making, but in cabinet design, it's, there's this desire to just layer upon layer. And we try, and then not to mention, like, the times where it's like people try to fake what it really is. You have the full overlay, and then you have panels that are trying to trick you into thinking it's inset, but it's not a consistent look. So, I don't know. I'm a little bit going down a rabbit hole here, but I think that ultimately, ultimately I look at what we do is this, expression of obviously design, and oftentimes I question, like, are we really doing what is asked of us, or are we just trying to, fulfill, like, our romanticism for what we do as a trade?
Yeah, I think it's a fine line, because we are at times interpreting architects' drawings, elevations. At times we're interpreting interior designers' elevations. Sometimes I use those terms loosely. They are suggestions. We get elevations, but we also, at the end of the day, we have to take those elevations and make them true to form, but also make them easy to install, and so that we can ultimately give them that look. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's a fine line.
What I know that you said that like there's an opportunity to make a ton of money within the trade now for these younger installers that are coming into this. At the age that you are now, with the experience that you have and being, working for a company, being a solo installer, and now a mix of dealing cabinetry and installing, what type of character traits would you look for in somebody who wanted to be an installer, who wanted to get into this, and what words of wisdom would you have for them?
I think the traits, was a book. I forgot the name of the book, but humble, hungry, and smart come to mind. Humble, hungry, and smart. I think the biggest thing is maybe curious, with not so much of an ego. Someone who can realize that they don't know something, and then also take notes and listen well, and then act on that. I know this is now growing as I'm talking, but I think somebody who's curious and somebody who has a desire to do the work and show up. Let's just show up first. But yeah, I think curiosity is a good trait to have as far as cabinetry. Man, there's so much. Go ahead.
It's tough. I've had helpers work for me. I've had employees work for me. I've had guys who have their own company come and help me out when I need a hand. And I will, generally speaking, pass the tools off to anyone to try anything. But then when it gets to like fitting and finish of cabinets, it's like, do I want somebody learning on my project? And that's the tough, like I know how I worked my way up, and it cost me a lot of money, and I made a lot of mistakes, and I ruined a lot of pre-finished molding. Ordered plywood panels that cost me $1,500 because I fucked something up. Where it's like, to put that on an employee, or allow an employee or an apprentice or a younger man or woman to learn that, it's a tough trade to break into, because the stakes seem to be high when you're doing that, and the lead times and the costs and the design and everything else. And generally you're inside a finished space. So I do feel it's the type of living that I would say would be like, hey, I want to get into the trades. This looks very appealing to me, but I also feel it would be a very tough trade to kind of really cut your teeth on.
Yeah, and you're not going to make a lot of money at first, and that's, I think, the hardest part. Is that starting off in a shop and getting a well-rounded sort of education on how cabinetry are built, how they're put together, how you can take them apart so you can cut them back out, cut them down in the field if need be.
Yeah.
Learning finishing. I mean, I'm drawing from personal experience working in a smaller shop. You learn, you become very well-rounded. So I think it's a slow process where, you're not going to make installer money, so to speak, right out the gate, because the stakes are so high, and you are going to be working on projects that can take a long time, and that can also are high stakes, and materials cost so much. Again, lead times are crazy. So you're going to be watching a lot, but there are times where you can let them loose with the tools. I do practice that with training guys. It's like, okay, I'm going to show you, and then I'm going to watch you. And I think more important, what that takes time. And sometimes you don't have the time. So you're just that guy's going to watch. Biggest thing you do is to show and then let them do it immediately after, so they can mimic the movement, see what you're doing, and then go from there. It takes time. I
think the shop move is great advice, because you are you're understanding design, you're understanding how cabinets are coming together. Not only just to be able to pull them apart, but like, you screw something up in the shop, it's fixable right then and there. Like, somebody can show you how to fix it. You understand that it's not the end of the world. And you work your way around finish, you work your way around tooling. And I think that once you get into the field, just having that confidence of being around it for so long would be super beneficial. I mean, yesterday I was drilling hardware at my mom's, and my wife was like, take a video of installing the hardware. And I was like, I really don't feel like doing this. And I wasn't paying attention. I had too many things going on, and I went to drill the hardware in the wrong spot. And like, I haven't done this in years. And I put a hot drill bit on the front of the cabinet, and I'm like, damn, that's in the wrong spot. And I'm just like, I'm just going to keep on going at this point. Like, I'll think about what I want to do. Like, is there a drawer head that I could switch somewhere or flip? And I'm like, nope. Only thing I can do is fix it. And at this point, I'm like, my mom's like, don't worry about it. I'll just order a new drawer head. I'm like, I'm not really worried about it. And what I'm ending up doing is fixing it, patching it, and then respraying it, because it's a lacquer that's pretty easy to work with. But like, just having that experience, and I didn't learn it from a shop. I had to learn it on my own and struggle through it. But like, had I learned in a shop, it would have been far less painful throughout the years. Like, it's not that painful now. Worst case, I order a new drawer head. Best case, I fix it with an hour or so of work. But just having, like, that's something that I would have lost sleep about for days, like 10 years ago. Where it's like, I'm going to hide it from the customer. And like, now I laugh about it because I'm like, I fucking did exactly what I've told everyone to not do in my entire life. And
Turned
like,
your brain off for a second.
And like, I immediately, like, I didn't drill all the way through it. I'm like a 16th in when I'm like, gauge is not set up for the wrong. So like, it was an immediate just lapse of judgment where, you know, I made the mistake that I told everyone, but it's not the end of the world. But having that experience is like, and having the self-esteem and the experience to know, like, everyone makes mistakes. Everything's not perfect. I screwed something up. Just like everyone else, I can fix it now, and laughing about it. And like, walking out of there with a drawer head missing because I need to spray it is not the end of the world anymore.
You know, I'm thinking about that, the question about hiring and the employees, and I'm drawing on the experience of the companies that I've worked with when I've trained them. And I would say a lot of the traits of one of the I'd say the one that jumps out at me that a lot of the people had out in the field was they had a little extra motivation in the morning. You know, they just had a little more drive. It's hard to put your finger on it. It's hard to say what it was. It's not to say that shop guys don't, but there's an independence, I think, that cabinet installers or people are drawn maybe to cabinet installation and being out in the field, where they just have this, like, come on, let's go.
Yeah.
How do you put your finger on that? How do you quantify that? I don't know. Maybe you can see it in an interview. Hard for me to say, because I don't have employees. I've only trained them.
Yeah.
But I'd say that's one trait that I have seen, is that they all just seems to have just a little bit of a fire in them that drives them to be out in the field.
Yeah. So where, with your work now, where are your leads coming from?
Interior designers and builders. Yeah. And now, more, I think, builders that I've been exposed to as an installer, they've started to, I think, maybe, and word's gotten out. I haven't advertised it much, but I think they've started to realize, okay, value was being, you know, you were bringing a lot of value to the table at the end of the day. And, you know, sometimes it takes them a while to realize that. So they have to go through a couple of cycles, which can take years as far as overall home builds, to go, okay, let's try out a new subcontractor.
Yeah.
It's a big deal for a contractor to try a new subcontract. As a contractor, to try out a new sub. I am a no quantity, yes, but at the same time, you know, what does John know what he's doing? And I think that dam has broken. And now it's game on, to the point where I'd say a little nervous about, okay, I need to be much more discerning about what products or projects I can take on.
Yeah.
And that is literally happening right now. I have to ask when do you need cabinetry? And also I have to ask myself, is this a project that I can actually perform on at a high level based on my current workload and future workload? So
what do you feel is the value? Is it the same that it's always been that you're bringing to the table? And what's that relationship look like for you, being that you're somebody who always overcommitted yourself and over delivered, and now it's like, hey, I may understand what my business looks like a little bit better now and understand how to properly get my margins, make my money, when before you were known for the guy who brought tremendous value by your execution, but also just your fixes, your skill set. And now it's like,
Yeah.
hey, I want to bring that same value from a quality perspective, but I want to properly charge for it.
So how do I bring it? I think at the end of the day, execution matters. If you're not executing on the back end, you don't bring any value. And so if you cannot execute, if you sell a good game at the front end and you have great cabinets, but you cannot perform on the back end with regards to scheduling or execution, you are no good to anybody. And so having spoken with some interior designers, they have said up front, and they've told their clients, listen, John is going to be more money up front. They've told him this. You're going to get an estimate from John. You're going to get an estimate from a competitor. John is our preferred vendor. John is our preferred, talking myself third person. It's annoying me, but he is somebody he's going to be more on the front end. However, it ends up being a wash because we don't have to manage him on the back end and charge you hourly for our time to problem solve,
right,
to go over these potential issues. And so, fortunately, I have interior designers now that are proactive in selling me to a client going, hey, listen, yeah, he looks more like he's more upfront. Problem is this other bid or other bids are going to be lower, but they end up costing you the same, if not more, because we have to manage them more. That, to me, that's execution.
Yeah.
That makes the interior designer's job easier. It makes the builder's job easier. Nobody wants to deal with, a mess on the back end, especially with cabinetry, because it is such a big ticket item and so much hinges on that.
Yeah.
So much. It's also like at a really important time of the project. It's going in, as everything is coming together, right? In millwork and cabinetry, it's not a fast install. Like, it's very methodical. It's piece by piece, and and it becomes this like critical path item that if it's done poorly, it impacts everyone to finish. Like it's like, oh yeah, I got to reorder that. It's like, well, now I can't put the countertop in or the backsplash or the faucet and get signed off for plumbing. And it's like an electrical and, and I mean, we've dealt with it internally, and it's, we've realized, where we need to improve, what are the things that we need to focus on, being, prioritizing, like it's just such an important part. And I think the way that these builders that you're talking about that you work with, them explaining to the client, like, yeah, that line item is going to be more expensive than this other guy, but we can keep our management exactly where it is because you're paying time. You're paying every hour that we work on that management. And we can tell you right now that we won't have to overmanage John.
Yes.
And, that obviously is a huge value, for someone working with you. And I think that anyone that's in a similar position as yourself, like Tyler, like, you told the story months ago about the project that you dealt with a nightmare, like installing someone else's cabinetry. It's exactly the same situation where it's, you went in there and you basically were like the golden boy, making everything come together and ultimately the best it could be. But everyone relied on you, regardless of whether they appreciated you or not. It's like they were like, well, Tyler will figure it out.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that situation I don't think was as financially great, but
No, and I think from like your perspective, John, that the important thing to know, like the sell for me like for a long time was similar, where it's like, hey, it may be more upfront, but you're going to get like, it'll be the same on the back end. It'll be a wash. And it's like, well, how do we get to the point where it's not the same on the back end? Like it's still more expensive, but
Yeah.
like,
And it is.
and like the sell is because you're getting me, you're getting my product, you're getting what we do. And I think that like, that's the industry that we need to help grow and support and foster, because at the end of the day, like there's a buyer for every service and every product, and what you do, and being so hands-on and being one person and remaining small, you have to make the margins that you have to, and you have to offer something that's truly different than what most other people have the ability or the capacity to do. And I think that like that's the sell, where it's like, hey, Jon's 30% more, but this is what you get with Jon. And like Jon's always going to be 30% or possibly more expensive. And he's our preferred vendor because this is the quality that we get with him. And I think that like once you differentiate yourself, and this isn't saying that you're not, but like once you position yourself, and these designers do that to the point where they have no choice but to hire you, it's like, okay, this is the business that I want to operate in. I don't have to worry about selling a dozen kitchens a year. I can stick to 3 or 4 kitchens a year and be financially like it's a viable career path for me, and you're not killing yourself.
Yeah. And it's not an either or. So the sales aspect of it, again, from the interior designer standpoint, is like, yeah, Jon's going to be more money up front. It might be more on the back end, but and also the quality is going to be just unmatched, and that is something that I do bring to the table. You walk through my projects, I'll walk through my projects, and I'm hypercritical of it. But even I enjoy walking through my projects, trying to pick them apart, and knowing that a client, because I don't have a showroom really.
Yeah.
So, these homes that I have installed cabinetry in, I have, built relationships with these clients where if I call them or email them and say, hey, can I walk a client through your house? Absolutely. Can't wait to meet them.
Yeah.
That's the sales point for me, because I have clients that genuinely want to meet future clients, who want to talk to them, and who want to show off the workmanship in their house and the cabinetry in their house. So yeah, it's a multi-pronged, I guess, approach. Isn't it as intentional as it should be? Probably not, but it ends up working for me.
Yeah.
Quite well. Because I don't want to be the cheap guy. I never have wanted to be the inexpensive guy. I can't.
Mm-hmm.
I don't.
Yeah, you can't when you're producing such like a small volume. You can't.
No.
I mean, it's tough to be the inexpensive guy when you're producing volume, but when you're not, it's like you're fighting a losing battle. Well, it's definitely neat to see the progression and where it's taken you, and kind of where you are now. Not that you're necessarily going to be getting leads from this podcast, but if somebody were like, hey, I want Jon to design and supply my kitchens, where are you sending people?
I would send people to my webpage. It's jch-cabinets.com or Instagram at JCH Cabinets mainly. That's where I do get a lot of, I would say, heavy leads locally. And that's what has helped me become, quote unquote, known, is through Instagram and seeing the cabinetry there. I am revamping the website. That's something that got to happen, and potentially rebrand as well. But Instagram at JCH Cabinets for sure is probably your best bet.
Well, even more relatable probably to the listeners. You are still doing the Craftsman training?
I am still doing the Craftsman training. Yes, and that's just it. The local cabinet sort of design and sales aspect has overtaken me right now, and it has created a hole in my life, maybe my soul, where I need to shift my focus back to the training, because it is so damn fulfilling to get out in front of people and train them and share what I know, because I don't want it to die with me. But I also love seeing that aha moment in people's eyes. Oh, God damn, why didn't I think of that? But I also get to work with people who are absolute gangsters out in the field and learn from them too. So it is very collaborative when I am training people. And so I miss that. I miss that camaraderie. I miss the teaching aspect of it so much, because I've been locked in on doing this and growing this here locally, that again, something has to give, and I've got to start shifting that focus back to the Craftsman training. And that's the other aspect. You can go to craftsmantraining.com to find me there as well. Find out more about it.
Damn.
Yeah, it's a struggle. Yeah. One man trying to doing a lot.
But I have finally started to let go of a lot of that by, again, bringing people in to help with the pricing, help with drafting at times, to let go of all of that control, because you can't.
Yeah.
And it's not as fun when you're controlling it all. It just becomes overwhelming.
Sometimes I wish we could just cherry pick like when we want to do the one thing that makes us happy, and then the moment I think about any hobby I've ever had, it's like when I'm having fun, I'm having fun. Like when I used to build cars, I used to be in the garage for hours. The moment something went wrong, I would put the tool down and I would leave. Like I wouldn't clean up. Like I maybe shut the radio off, but like I was like, nope, I'm not allowing myself to dip into this zone.
Yeah.
And you can't do that. You can't do that with work.
It's hard. Yeah, it's hard. So maybe I'll figure that out one day.
Yeah. John, good to see you, man.
Appreciate it, guys. Sorry about the mic issues, but
you're good.
No, it actually, whatever you did actually cleared it up.
All right, good.
You're a pro podcaster by now.
There we go.
I actually completely forgot about it, but I would remember your settings for the next time, because whatever you changed fixed it.
It was, I put it on auto.
Sweet.
That conversation brings back a lot of thoughts I've had with Materia and Ken. And, Ken and I, while we are very like-minded, we also see some things very differently. And I had sent him a note while we were on the podcast just to bring this conversation back up. What did he write?
He responded already.
He goes, "Gotcha." I'm like, the enthusiasm
that went over well.
Kills me. But I think what John talked about is there's a lot of truth to it. It's the opportunity to kind of supplement the revenue with a product, right? And something that is, and not only just a product, because we've done this. Let me back up. We have done this. We have tried to work with other shops. We failed miserably. I filmed and showed the entire world how we ripped the kitchen out that I paid for and never asked for a refund because it just didn't hit our standard. But it for me, it's the idea of working with other shops or other people or other resources to be able to increase our opportunity to work with people and offer what we do. Because just because it's not us building the cabinet doesn't mean we can't produce a great project. And I think about the complete opposite side of that is we have a client that built with us years ago, shall remain unnamed, and they decided to purchase the cabinetry from another manufacturer and spent more money. It was more money for them to buy the cabinetry than it was for us to build the cabinetry. And the install, because it was a product and the installer just didn't take into consideration how it fit in the space, looks like shit.
Yeah.
It doesn't look good. It looks like shit. And to think that, if we had handled the install or if we had built it, it would have been substantially better. And so, ultimately, my point is was supposed to be this really high-end cabinet install, and it just ultimately didn't, get installed great, so it doesn't look great.
Yeah, so. It's a bummer. Cabinetry it's really tough. And the more, it's always been tough. It's never been, I've always enjoyed it because it's been challenging, but whether it's design, installation, coordination with people, communication, it's a really, really difficult thing. And when people do a kitchen, it's the cabinets, countertops, but it's the and it's a lot of times it's not. It might be a third of the budget for the project. It's not. There's so much money and everything else, but it's about the cabinetry. So, people want their cabinets to be a certain way. And it always has been a challenging aspect of the trade and of the industry, and the systems aren't great for it. It definitely proves to be challenging to me, and it continues to be so. And it's not necessarily on the installation aspect of things that I'm referring to, but it's neat to see what John made his name socially and professionally recently, the past 10 years from a solo installer perspective. And he reached a point where it's not a viable career path anymore. He said he got hurt, financially, physically, whatever it may be. So it's like, hey, what else can we do to make a living? How else can I bring my knowledge and my expertise to this industry and still, continue to hone my craft, and just be able to get my name out there in the cabinet field. So it's neat to see the progression and the adaptation that I think at some point, or at many points throughout everyone's career, they're going to have to do.
Yeah. Good to have Jon back on. Guys, before we log off, head over to moderncraftsman.co, not com. It's .co, and hit the extras tab. We got a free downloadable labor burden calculator and pre-construction agreement. And you're going to hear this here first. We'll have more information coming up, but we're going to be hosting a webinar soon, and we're going to be sharing more about our pre-construction course that we've been putting together for you guys. Tyler and myself do a lot of consulting calls. We talk one-on-one with you guys for an hour, and Tyler and I spent some time and went through what all of those calls were about. And there was an overwhelming amount of people wanting to talk about pre-construction. So what did Tyler and I do? We put together a bunch of information for you guys to help walk through from very beginning to actually implementing a pre-construction process into your business. So if you want to learn more about that, moderncraftsman.co, sign up for our newsletter. And if you don't want to, at least download the 2 downloadable files. We'll share those with you for free. Like we've said previously, those used to be something that we charged for, and we opted to make that a little bit of a freebie.
A lot of information also is an understatement. It's been a lot of work, and there's a lot of information. So it's definitely all useful information, but it is chock full of information for you.
Yeah,
there's no shortage.
And no doubt this is the first of many. So if you want to be involved early, I would suggest signing up for a newsletter so you can get the behind the scenes. That's where you're going to hear all more about this first before any podcast, any social media post. So yeah, moderncraftsman.co.